All right, Mr. Delaney, my name is Steve LeCagnan. I am the new president and CEO of the Morgantown Area Chamber of Commerce, and we're here today interviewing all of the council candidates that we can, I think 12 out of the 14, to give everybody an opportunity to address the citizens of Morgantown about themselves and their candidacy and to answer some specific questions that are of interest to the business community in particular and to the community at large. So if you would introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and your candidacy, we'd appreciate that.
Oh, sure. My name is Ron Delaney again. I am an architect and a professor of design at West Virginia University. I live in Morgantown in Woodburn with my wife and 3 children. My children go to Mountaineer Middle School and Eastwood now, Eastwood Elementary School. The reason I'm running for city council is I feel like Morgantown has done a lot of really great planning. We can look at the Morgantown Comprehensive Plan that was completed in 2013, the MPO, the Crossroads Plan, as well as the Downtown Redevelopment Plan. And I think that there's been a great amount of foundational work done, and I think it's time to make some progress or continue our progress in working through these plans. I feel like as an architect, I'm particularly strong and suited to do that. It's not unusual for me in my practice experience to get a project where you're taking input from a great many number of stakeholders, and somehow out of all of that information, even a lot of it conflicting, you have to find a vision out of that is suitable and good for the greatest number of people. So I feel like my experience as an architect, the abilities that I've obtained doing that will bring some expertise and experience to the council that will help us move forward.
Thank you. Our first question deals with the transportation bill, which was passed by the West Virginia legislature a little over a year ago. It happens to be a priority for the Morgantown Area Chamber of Commerce and the business community in particular in this county. And as you know, the Chamber is seeking to obtain voter approval of a 1% sales tax increase through the transportation bill that was recently enacted to improve roads and related infrastructure in Montague County, including the city. What will you do, if anything, to publicly promote and advocate for voter approval of the proposed sales tax for this purpose?
Well, our infrastructure is clearly not kept up with our growth. The Metropolitan Planning Organization's Long-Range Transportation Plan, which I strongly support, identifies a $564 million gap between the work that we need to have done by 2040 and the amount of state and national funding that's available for those. So clearly we have to do something. With the current budgetary pressures at the federal and the state levels, local governments are left to shoulder more of the cost of providing services for their citizens and other stakeholders. We have to come up with some alternative methods of funding these projects. And I assume you're talking about the Letting Our Counties Act Locally, the local bill. That was, that you guys prioritized for adoption by Monongalia County is one approach that I think could and should be considered. The local act gives counties the authority to levy up to a 1% sale and use tax to fund 1, improvements to existing state roads and bridges, and 2, construction of new roads and bridges. While the city of Morgantown has implemented the use tax to fund improvements to local roads, the state Division of Highways roads that run through Morgantown continue to be a point of contention, of conflict, of frustration for many of us. Adoption of the local act would give the county the authority to address these conditions of state roads within its boundaries, even those within its municipalities, if given the consent of those municipalities. Adoption could provide more local input and control of our state roads, and that's a good thing. This type of use for local funds would benefit both the city and the non-city county residents alike. So I think that I would support, as a city councilor, I would certainly support exploring that as one of the options that we have to close that funding gap.
Thank you. The next question we have for you concerns the concept of an alliance which would house the Morgantown Area Chamber of Commerce, Main Street Morgantown, Sunnyside Up, the Montague County Development Authority, the Morgantown Area Economic Partnership, and the Greater Morgantown Convention and Visitors Bureau, all under one roof in a central location in downtown Morgantown. It's a priority for the chamber. What will you do, if anything, to publicly promote and advocate for this to become a reality?
Well, I think it'd be wonderful to establish even closer relationships between the many entities devoted to the betterment and promotion of Morgantown. And you guys have provided a list of some of those, but I think that list should also include the city government, the county government, and West Virginia University. So I think that that's a great idea. As an architect, I believe that physical co-location of people and organizations can contribute to strengthening collaboration, collegiality, and effectiveness. Additionally, co-locating the entities listed in the question may offer additional advantages such as better coordination, cost savings associated with the shared use of building and resources, and one-stop service for your clientele, especially those that are served by two or more of these entities. So I think there are a lot of advantages. I think the key to success in any co-location is to do it in such a way that the individual identities of the co-located organizations remain recognizable and accessible for their clientele. This is possible through careful design of the physical space, and that's something that I have some experience with. So I would advocate for centrally locating such a shared facility in town, and that sounds like that's what you guys desire. And I think it makes sense too, because the city and county buildings are here, as well as the university's central administration. If these entities agree in principle to co-locate and decide to explore it downtown, I would certainly support consideration of reasonable local tax, parking, and other potential applicable incentives proposed by the city manager and his team.
Thank you. Our next question deals with Metro government. What will you do privately and publicly to promote and advocate for the consolidation of the local governments of Morgantown, Granville, Westover, and Star City into a single metro governmental entity?
Well, first of all, I want to clarify that I think it would be inappropriate for me as a city councilor to conduct city business privately. So that's probably not what you mean, but I just want to clarify that up front. So as a result, if elected, I'll approach all of my work as public work. I'll assume that even if it's a conversation between me and someone else, that it's public and will go public. And so my obligation is always to work in the best interest of the greatest number of constituents. So to my knowledge, there hasn't been an organized public process for exploring the advantages and disadvantages of a consolidated metro government. Advantages for other localities have included more cost-effective and better coordinated delivery of some services, and while the disadvantages have sometimes included a reduction in level of services and/or level of representation in government for one or the other consolidating entities. However, I think because of the potential benefits, it's a conversation that we ought to have, and it's something that we should explore. With some shared planning and service initiatives, such as the MPO, MUB, and BOPark, already in place, we may already be realizing some of the general benefits of a metropolitan government. Are we going far enough? I think that's something that we certainly should explore. The advantages of a consolidated metro government are compelling, but so are the disadvantages. Other models of metropolitan government exist and should also be considered. I guess my bottom line is that if we can do things in a better way, in which the potential benefits of a change would clearly outweigh the cost, then I'm absolutely an advocate for exploring making a change. However, again, as I understand it, that assessment hasn't been done, but I certainly would support developing a public process where we can study that together.
Our next question deals with Morgantown's user fee. Will you publicly support the idea of using some of the money generated by Morgantown's user fee to improve state-owned roadways that happen to run through the city of Morgantown?
Yeah, that's a good question. So regarding the revenue that's generated from the user fee, I would view my responsibility as a city councilor to ensure that the money is spent effectively in a timely manner and for the purpose for which it was approved. And I also think that we need to continue to monitor it and assess whether it remains necessary or not. Again, we've dug ourselves into a deep infrastructure hole, and this is one way that we're trying to work to get out of it. So whether we could apply those user fees to state roads or not, I think if we can, that's certainly something that I would consider. However, I think we have to be cautious that we don't begin to assume the responsibilities and the costs of maintenance from the state once we get into that, it may be difficult to get out of that again. What I would prefer to see is that we create a stronger advocacy in Charleston for our needs in terms of meeting those long-term goals. However, I would be willing to consider, again, so long as it was appropriate in the way that the user fee was approved, I think it'd be worth considering whether we could leverage some of those funds to help prioritize our projects in our area, but apply those funds to value-added areas of the project. So for example, when scheduled roadway maintenance is coming up, do we contribute funds to help develop this roadway, these state corridors as a complete streets with bicycle and proper bicycle and pedestrian access along those avenues? So I'm willing to consider it as long as that's possible in the way that the fee is applied. I just think we have to be careful in the way that we do it, and we should approach it in a value-added way.
Thank you. Our final question concerns your ideas. What ideas do you have to improve economic development and create economic activity centers within the city of Morgantown, since most of the economic development that has occurred in the last 10 years has occurred outside the city of Morgantown?
Right. So again, as an architect, I'm a believer in plans. I think that the reason that we do plans is because they form roadmaps for our future. That said, they are general and they don't necessarily, the devil's in the details in terms of how we get them done. However, I think as a starting point, I'm an advocate of those. And the 2013 Morgantown Comprehensive Plan should, I think, again, serve as the foundation for establishing priorities in the area of economic development. They did do an economic development assessment as part of that. And not surprisingly, the first objective was investment in infrastructure, and we talked a little bit about that already here. I think the city has started to make progress in that area in terms of the implementation of the user fee, the use of the TIF districts that we have, the creation of the new Spruce Street district, so that's allowing us to deal somewhat with that infrastructure issue. I think they've also invested heavily in the airport and the industrial park out there, which is fantastic. That gives us better connectivity beyond Morgantown and also provides some shelf space for some new types of business development. Strong growing businesses are critical to sustaining good jobs and creating a great quality of life for our residents. I think on the policy side, again, the comprehensive plan lays out some things that we could consider, for example, providing real estate tax incentives associated with job creation, and or exploring revisions of the B&O tax so that it's more business friendly. So I think on the policy side we could do this. I mentioned the airport as a center to answer your question more directly. I'm also especially interested in downtown and helping to diversify the types of businesses that we have downtown. I think right now we're underutilizing one of our tremendous assets, which is WVU. They've recently initiated an entrepreneurship and innovation program, and they have incubators, and I think we need to brand and market ourselves as the place where when folks who startups that come out of there, they want to stay here in Morgantown.
Thank you so much. We've now come to the portion of the program where we allow each of the candidates for City Council to take 2 minutes to express themselves and their ideas about their own candidacy and any other thoughts that they want to express to the voters of Morgantown.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to respond to your questions and concerns. Again, I think my strength as a city council candidate is that I would bring experience as an architect, and I have experience developing from plans into very concrete designs and working with many, many folks, building contractors, lenders, and others to see a project see a project become realized, become a tangible thing in the world. And I have designed or managed projects ranging in cost from a couple $1,000s to $100 million. And so I have experience with the business side of getting a project done as well, and I can appreciate that. As a city council candidate, I think these have been very thought-provoking questions, and I think that some of them deal with policy that are maybe a little bit outside of my area of expertise, but I think many of them are in my area of expertise in terms of infrastructure. I think one of the most important things as a city council person is to work collaboratively, transparently if possible, and to always keep at heart what's in the best interest of our city as a whole. And so as a city councilor, if I'm so fortunate, that will be my driving motto. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.